Have you ever walked out of a conversation and thought, why do people never seem to take me seriously? You shared an idea and nobody reacted. You spoke up in a meeting and someone repeated your exact point 5 minutes later and got all the credit. You tried to set a boundary and people laughed as if you were joking, and the worst part? You know you're intelligent. You know you have something valuable to say, but somehow the world doesn't respond to you the way you expected. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't take you seriously because of what you know. They take you seriously because of what you communicate. And that's actually great news, because if the problem was your intelligence, you'd be stuck with it. But if the problem is communication, posture, presence, and perception, then you can change it. You can change it starting today. I remember meeting someone years ago who completely changed how I think about confidence. He wasn't particularly tall, he wasn't loud, he didn't have a deep movie trailer voice, he didn't wear expensive clothes. But the moment he walked into a room, everyone paid attention. Not because he demanded attention, because he expected it. And that one observation haunted me for years. What was he doing differently? Why did people lean in when he spoke? Why did nobody interrupt him? Why did his jokes land, his stories matter, and his opinions carry weight? The answer wasn't what I expected. It wasn't charisma. It wasn't status. It was something much simpler and much more powerful. He believed that what he had to say mattered, and he communicated that belief through hundreds of tiny signals. Let me ask you a question. When you speak, do you sound like you're sharing valuable information? Or do you sound like you're asking permission to exist? That question changed my life. Because most people who aren't taken seriously aren't lacking intelligence. They're leaking uncertainty. Think about how often we say things like, "This might be a stupid idea, but," or "I don't know if this makes sense." Or, "Sorry, can I just say something?" What have you done before you've even started speaking? You've told everyone that your own words don't deserve respect. Imagine walking into a restaurant and seeing a chef come out and say, "Honestly, this food is probably terrible. I don't really know what I'm doing, but maybe try it anyway." Would you eat the food? Of course not. Yet every day, intelligent people sabotage themselves with verbal disclaimers. Here's something fascinating about human psychology. People often borrow their opinion of you from you. If you communicate uncertainty about yourself, they become uncertain about you. Now, this doesn't mean you should become arrogant. Confidence and arrogance are not cousins. They're strangers. Arrogance says, "I'm better than everyone." Confidence says, "I have value too." There's a huge difference. So here's the first change you can make immediately. Stop apologizing for your existence. Instead of saying, "This is probably wrong," but say, "Here's another perspective." Instead of saying, "Sorry, can I ask a question?" say, "I have a question." Instead of saying, "I don't know if this makes sense," say, "Here's what I'm thinking." Notice something? The idea didn't change. Only the delivery changed. And people don't just hear your words. They hear your relationship with your words. But that's only part of the story. Because maybe you've already tried sounding more confident. Maybe you've tried speaking louder or standing taller, and it still didn't work. That's because there's another mistake that silently destroys credibility. You speak too fast. I know. You think speaking fast makes you sound smart. I thought the same thing. Years ago, I gave a presentation where I was so nervous that I spoke at what can only be described as auctioneer speed. I delivered 20 minutes of information in what felt like 3.5 minutes. At the end, someone came up to me and said, "Wow, you seem really nervous." I was devastated because I thought I had hidden it. But nervous energy leaks, and one of the biggest leaks is speed. Have you ever noticed that people with authority rarely rush? Think about the teacher you respected most, the manager everyone listened to, the friend whose advice always seemed wise. Did they speak like they were racing against time? No, they paused. And those pauses weren't empty, they were powerful, because a pause communicates something incredible. It says, "I believe what I'm saying is worth waiting for." That's why silence is one of the most underrated communication skills in the world. The next time someone asks you a question, try something strange. Pause for 1 second before answering, just 1 second. It will feel like 10 years. Your brain will scream, "Say something, anything." But that tiny pause changes how people perceive you, because people associate calmness with competence. When you're rushed, others assume you're uncertain. When you're calm, others assume you're capable. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to feel confident to appear confident. Sometimes you practice the behavior first, and the emotion catches up later. But there's another reason people don't take you seriously, and this one hurts. You don't take yourself seriously. Let me explain. Have you ever had a goal you never committed to? Maybe you wanted to start a business, learn a language, get fit, create content, ask someone out, or change your life. And every day you told yourself, I'll start tomorrow. Then tomorrow became next week. Then next week became next year. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your brain notices, your self-trust decreases, and eventually even you stop believing yourself. How can you expect the world to take you seriously when you've taught yourself not to? I learned this lesson through something embarrassingly simple. Years ago, I promised myself I would wake up at 6 every morning. Day 1, success. Day 2, success. Day 3, I hit snooze 17 times and negotiated with myself like I was conducting a hostage exchange, and that moment revealed something important. Confidence isn't built by thinking differently. It's built by keeping promises. Every promise you keep is a vote for your future identity. You say you'll exercise? Exercise. You say you'll read? Read. You say you'll speak up? Speak up. Not because the action itself changes everything, but because every kept promise whispers to your brain, you can trust me. And trust, especially self-trust, is the foundation of personal authority. Now, here's something nobody talks about. Sometimes people don't take you seriously because you're trying too hard to be liked. Ouch. I know. But stay with me. Have you ever laughed at a joke you didn't find funny just to fit in? Agreed with something you disagreed with? Pretended to be okay with being interrupted? Allowed someone to disrespect you because you didn't want to create tension? Most of us have, because humans are wired for connection. But there's a strange paradox. The more desperately you seek approval, the less respect you often receive. Why? Because respect requires boundaries. Imagine borrowing money from two different people. The first person says, take as much as you want, no rush, no worries, honestly, whatever. The second person says, sure, here's the amount, please return it on Friday. Who do you instinctively respect more? Usually the second person. Not because they're mean, because they're clear. People who are taken seriously understand something powerful. Being kind does not mean being weak. You can smile and still have standards. You can be warm and still say no. You can be respectful and still demand respect. And here's the interesting part. The moment you stop trying to convince everyone to like you, people often start respecting you more, because authenticity is magnetic. Think about the people you admire. Are they admired because they agree with everyone? No. They're admired because they stand for something. Which leads us to perhaps the most important lesson of all. Your presence speaks before you do. I once watched two people walk into the same room. One person entered while looking at the floor, adjusting their clothes, avoiding eye contact, almost apologizing for taking up space. The other person walked in calmly, not aggressively, not arrogantly, just calmly, head up, eyes forward, breathing slowly. And before either person spoke a single word, everyone had already made assumptions about them. That's how fast human beings judge. Within seconds, people create stories about who you are. The good news, you get to influence that story, not by pretending to be someone else, but by physically communicating that you belong. Try this tomorrow. Before entering a room, pause. Take one breath, lift your chest slightly, relax your shoulders, walk in as if you have every right to be there because you do, and I know what some of you are thinking, but what if I'm not naturally confident? Perfect. Neither are most people. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill. Nobody is born knowing how to communicate authority. Nobody is born knowing how to set boundaries, speak clearly, use pauses, or trust themselves. These are learned behaviors, which means they can be learned by you. And maybe that's the message you needed to hear today. You're not being ignored because you're unintelligent. You're not being overlooked because you're unworthy. You're not being dismissed because you lack potential. You're being judged by signals you can change. So the next time you wonder why nobody takes you seriously, don't ask, what's wrong with me? Ask, what am I communicating? Because the world responds to the version of you that you present. And here's what I hope you remember. You do not become someone worth taking seriously. You realize that you've always been someone worth taking seriously. Your job is simply to stop hiding that person. And the moment you stop apologizing for your voice, stop rushing your words, stop breaking promises to yourself, stop chasing approval, and start carrying yourself like you belong, something incredible happens. The world doesn't suddenly change. You do. And when you change, the world finally begins to see what was there all along.